This is a book review of Under the Moon by Myracle, a Catwoman tale, a graphic novel, it says there, illustrated by Goodhart. Now, this book is approximately about 220 pages. It's a fairly finished book, but it's obviously a bit smaller than your standard graphic novel and omnibus, etc. But it's still a really decent read. I love this book, I must admit. Absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful colouring all the way through, beautiful blues and purples. But this book came out in 2019, and, well, it's actually quite an intense book. This is about Selina, of course, Catwoman, and for 15 years she's put up with a mother's string of bad boyfriends. When a new one comes along, and he's even more vicious. I mean, at one point there's a really horrible scene where something happens, and basically she needs to get out, and she can't live under the same roof. And, well, a lot of obviously story about abandonment, and also the other characters as well have got their issues. And this is an absolutely intense book, thoroughly interesting. And even at the point at the end, I must admit, which is well, I guess this is not something you'd probably find in a standard comic book. It was actually a selection here about resources for stopping domestic violence, resources for avoiding self-harm, because there's a scene in here that's about self-harm, resources for stopping animal cruelty. I mean, there's some actually pretty vicious bits with animals, obviously the story Catwoman with, and this is obviously got a variety of all the websites, etc. And, well, I'm just going to go through this book. 2019 this book came out. It's obviously from DC Comics, and I absolutely found this fascinating. A really good read all the way through. Beautifully drawn all the way through. And it says here, life pretty much sucks. You've got this opening scene, like just gorgeous artwork, absolutely gorgeous artwork. And the story, of course, she goes to a school. You've got all the various her relationships at school, her friends, etc. But she's got this really vicious, evil boyfriend. It's obviously the mother's boyfriend, who is an absolute nasty piece of work. And it's a very dramatic story. But also, there's some more familiar characters. Obviously, Selina's life interacts with, of course, Bruce Wayne. And you've got a lovely bit with Bruce Wayne here. So it's I love the way the flashbacks, you've got the flashbacks in purple, you've got the blues, the current time. And it's, I think, just beautifully drawn, but it's still telling a very powerful tale all the way through it. And there's a lot in this book. Certainly not your average run-of-the-mill sort of graphic novel that you think, well, Thanos gets the Infinity Gauntlet, etc., destroys half the universe kind of story. Well, this is actually down to a more real-world scenario, to a degree, of course. There is an element you're shown Selina learning to become Catwoman, but it's, I think, some interest in the relationships also with her friends as well. She goes off into a community, obviously, where there's a crime involved. Catwoman, strange enough, that. And but I think it's just so well done all the way through this. Now, in terms of action, it's not high impact. There's not really, I mean, obviously there's action in terms of, or violence, certainly, but there's not action in what most people consider the traditional sort of punch 'em up, battling sort of comic books. This is definitely not the case with this book. I think it's just generally a powerful story, relationships, friendships, personal problems obviously from various things like boyfriend that's of the mother, and whole loads of other things. And it's just an absolute brilliant read. And I'm just going to go to another bit here. But anyway, the art, you've seen the artwork. The artwork is superb, and that's the quality and standard all the way through. The story runs through. It's a fairly easy to read book. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, the panel structure you've got like here, there's like 4 panels on a page. Right? There's nothing complex in terms of the flow of the story. I think it's just a real thing. There's a few twists and turns in the story as well, which is, of course, what you always want in stories like this. But I think it's just great. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. Fascinating read. And now I'm just going to go to the end. Obviously, going to pass the bit. I've just shown the bit where they've got the resources, etc. And it's got obviously information there. And then you've got character design. So you've got a little bit, the character design's a bit weird, as if they sort of like did this from a computer printout or something. It's very blurry, which is very odd. And then there's a good little article at the back, or interview at the back with the writer and the artist. They're interviewing each other. So you've got that. And then you've got a little bit of pictures obviously about the artist and the writer. And it's really, really good. Obviously, apparently she's done quite a lot of other web comics, Welcome to Showside, Love is Love, and all those sorts of things. That's from Isaac Goodhart. And then on to the next bit. This is a special sneak preview as well. And this one looks quite good as well. The Teen Titan Raven. So it's going to be an interesting story potential to get. So I'll check that out. And there's lots of others in this series of DC Inks. I think there's ones for Beast Boy. There's also, of course, one for Batgirl. I think there's others as well. So definitely a series to check out. Thoroughly enjoyed this and totally recommended.